What's going on, guys? Welcome back. My name is Brandon. The price of gas is straight through the roof, and my wife said to me, is it possible to make her dirt bike that I rebuilt for her street legal? Absolutely. That's what we're going to do today, guys. Stick around. Here it is, guys. This is my wife's 2001 XR100R. I picked this up, paid $400 for it, did a complete rebuild on it. I'll have a link up above if you guys want to check it out. But she's thinking now that she would like to make this street legal. Now here in Maine, street legal dirt bikes are pretty easy to do. This won't go too fast. I might end up re-gearing it. I'd like to get it to be able to go around 50 miles an hour. This would be a great around town commuter vehicle, and it will be a lot of fun, and it'll probably get about 100 miles to the gallon. I'm going to show you in depth everything that you need to do to convert a dirt bike, and that can be any dirt bike that never had any lighting on it, to having full turn signals and everything. So let me explain to you what we need here in our state of Maine to make a dirt bike street legal. First thing it's got to do is got to have a headlight, it's got to have tail lights, it's got to have blinkers, it's got to have front blinkers, it's got to have a horn. But one of the things that makes this a little difficult with this vehicle is that this has drum brakes, so there's no hydraulics on it. So I've got a real great solution for that. And I've got a great solution for this. As you can see, again, this has cable brakes on the front. Easy workaround to that. Let me show you what it is. Now, if you're wondering what this costs, it's going to be right around $300 plus or minus. I'll put a link down in the description for everything that I'm using, including all the part numbers, so you can go out and duplicate this exactly as I've done it here. Although $300 sounds like a lot of money, you know, for my pickup truck, that's less than 3 fill-ups. So if you think you might fill up your pickup truck over the course of a summer 3 times, and you're not driving your pickup and you're driving your dirt bike to work, that may pay for itself. So that's something to consider as well. Another thing I forgot to mention is you also need mirrors, or at least one. So that's how you solve this, guys. This is the right hand brake, and it's got the adjustment on it. But you can see right here, it's got a little terminal so that when you pull the brake in, it engages a switch inside this. That's down in there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's down in there. So that'll allow us so that when you apply the front brake, that the brake light on the rear of the dirt bike will turn on. And that's what the connectors look like right there. You can see it's also got a provision to thread in a mirror if you want one. This is going to be a fun project, guys. I'm really looking forward to it. Plus, it's different. I don't think this will decrease the value of the dirt bike any at all. If anything, I think it'll make it more desirable for the next guy that might want to pick it up if I ever decide to sell it. Just get the cable out of there. This should be a pretty straightforward kit, guys, that I'm going to do. You'll see it and we'll talk about it as we go. But like I said, this will be everything that you need to know to be able to convert a dirt bike that has no provisions for electrical on it to a street legal dirt bike with a charging system and a battery. Out with the old, in with the new. Now with the perch all back on, just got to hook it back up. Piece of cake. So you can see the 2 terminals right here, guys. This is where it'll complete the circuit. I've got one end of a multimeter on it because I want to adjust it. So I've just got my multimeter clamped to it, and I've got it set up right here so it'll make a sound when it completes the circuit. And then right under here you can see this little Phillips head screw right there. All I'm doing is just taking a pair of needle nose pliers, sliding this switch in and out of this, and once I get it so that just as I break contact from this, I want the brake light to turn on. So I'm basically adjusting it right now before I put a brake light on it. So I can do this with one hand. I've got the other one clipped on there. So now watch what'll happen. There we go. See that? And then it. So that's how that setup works. I just do a little bit of brake movement. And that's good right there. Now I'll just adjust down that set screw. So now not only do I know that this switch works, I won't have to like troubleshoot this when I go back through. If I have any problems with this not turning on, I'll already know that I've adjusted this properly and it's all ready to go. This is pretty easy to adjust. And I went ahead and installed the clutch lever on the left side. And again, it has a provision for a mirror mount. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, and I'm going to put on the stoplight switch for the rear brake pedal. So this is going to be so that when you step on the pedal to the brake, that you actually have a tail light. And what I've done is I've just kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Is I just took a small tiny hole, drilled a hole right in that linkage that you can see, and then I just threaded that spring through it. Then on the other end, this clamp that comes with it, I just took some contact adhesive and sprayed some contact adhesive in this area right here and in this area. And this black that you see, that's just an old piece of a tire tube that I stuck in there. That way it'll kind of grip the frame real good, give it some real good cushion, and it won't dig up the paint. Now we're just going to bolt this up. I've got a multimeter out so I can test between these two contacts, so that when I press the brake down with a little bit of brake pressure, I want to be able to get continuity on these terminals. And then this on the other side is where you put your wire terminals. There are some other ways of doing it. I saw someone had put a switch from here to here, but I kind of don't like that idea. I'm hoping I don't have to do that, because I'm trying to keep this, out of the moisture, out of the rain, kind of keep it tucked up a little bit higher on the bike so it's not getting, hammered with water and stuff. Here it is, guys, all adjusted and all on. The only thing I changed is I moved the point from here, where the hole is, a little bit forward, so it was more pulling in line, and that's what it looks like right there. Just tightened up, and I'll show you how you can test it. So when you press the brake, it pulls on that plunger. Let me show you. So I have my meter set up so it measures continuity. So when you hear that sound, contact's being made in that switch. Touch these two contacts here and press down on the brake pedal. Yeah, so that's done. So now it's time to mount the blinkers that come with this Tusk kit. Now, if you have an XR100R, you won't have to do anything to modify this taillight at all, as far as like getting it to fit in the bike. What I've done is I've taken the taillight and just unscrewed this and pulled off this little piece of rubber gasket. So that way I'm using the rubber gasket as a template. Then I just set it on the rear fender where it looks good, and then I just used a center punch to mark the plastic where all my holes are going to go. I don't know if you can see it, but it left me with a nice mark right there, another one there, and another one there. All I gotta do is just drill it. I'll do the same to both sides, and then we'll put it all together and get this thing started, get it wired up. The hole for the mounting bolt, guys, the one right here, that hole is 13/64. I use the 13/64 drill bit to do that. So the hole where the wire goes through, use a 1/4" drill bit. And the one back here, I was mistaken, you don't have to drill it. So there's only going to be 2 holes in this piece. All right, guys, this is how I ran it underneath. So these are all on the outside, as you can see, and I just wanted to show you what I did underneath. Is I kind of took the cables, ran them nice and back here, and kind of like tucked them way in the back corner, and then put a cable tie right at the very back, right there. That way it kind of keeps the wires nice and neat, out of the way. When you look up under there, that kind of gives it, I think, a pretty factory look. Now, might as well go for the controls and get the controls on it. I'm trying to get most of the components on that have like wires on them and stuff. That way I can kind of get an idea of what's going to be involved with wiring all this up and what needs to be done. We'll slip the back fender on here in a few minutes. That's pretty easy to do. It'll definitely have a factory look to it, and that's kind of what I like. That's what I was going for. Now these, the brackets will be in one box, and the hand guards will be in another. And these only go on one way. You can see how it's got a little relief cut right in there, so you could not put it on the other way. So you really can't mess it up. And all I did is I just put this through, and I cinched it down lightly so that I could adjust the hand guard, you know, in and out as I needed it once I got this secured on the bar. And this is pretty easy too, putting these on. So just take the screws out of these clamps, just like that. Like I said, these can only go on one way, so you really can't even mess it up. Alright. I mean, it's literally this simple, guys. I love it. I wanted a real clean look on the front, which is why I wanted these with the integrated turn signals. And that's, like I said, the same thing I have on my dirt bike, and it just looks really clean because you really don't notice them. These will be orange. We'll work on getting these in here in a second. And installing the blinkers is really simple too. Just have two pieces that basically slide together, sandwiched through the handguard. That goes there, and the other piece just sticks onto the back. You're going to need like a micro screwdriver because these screws that go on the back, there's only two of them that hold this in. They're super small. If you don't have a micro screwdriver kit, you're going to like need one. Almost like an eyeglass type screwdriver kit. This was super easy, guys, to mount the horn. All I did is I just removed this bolt that holds down the tank, slid the bracket in between the bolt in the mount, and tightened it down. That's it. All I had to do was just push this back just a little bit, so that when I turned the wheel, that the forks didn't hit it. There's about 1/4 of an inch of clearance all the way around, so nothing's going to hit it. It's up out of the way. I think that's a great place to mount that. So it looks like, I think we're pretty close to being able to take off the tank now, because now we know where we want everything. Maybe I'll start, put that rear fender in first, and then we'll take the tank off. Now this kit can be used as a standalone type kit, meaning that you don't have to cut into your electrical system. Basically everything will just plug into this battery, and then you charge this battery. They say you can go like 3 days because these are all LEDs, but I want to put a charging system on this. So what I'm needing to do is have a rectifier and regulator. All right, guys, here's another detail that I wanted to share with you because it's important and it's going to matter. So you can see how I've got all these wires extending up through there. The hopes is that these will pretty much be hidden once this fender's all up in there. And the way I did it is, you can see from this side, is I drilled a 1/2 inch hole right through this area. So let me square it up so you can get an idea of where it is. It's probably about 1 inch in from this bolt hole. And how I was able to do that is I actually took off the factory connector off these wires. So they belong in this connector right here. So what I did is I drew myself a little diagram looking into the end of the plug, so I know how to put these back together. It'll be red, black, and yellow. Red, black, yellow. So you can see on these it has a little, see that little stake sitting off the side? That's what they click in. So all I did is just use a little pick. I stuck the pick down inside this, and I was able to push the wire out of it. And I'll show you how they go back in. Pretty simple. Now, if I hadn't have done that, guys, I would have had to have drilled a lot bigger hole because I would have had to get this connector through. But I didn't want a real big hole. I wanted just something nice and tiny, so that things will just be nice and neat and orderly. This is all you do. Stick that in like that. Find where it goes. And then just listen. It might even hear it click. There. And it just clicks in. That's it. Red, then black, and then yellow. It's as simple as that. On this side, I just kind of like lined up everything to make them all look fairly pretty much even. And you can see how the fender's sticking out a little bit, but I want to show you as I slide that up. You see right there where the wires are? Watch as I slide that up, how, there, you see that? Those wires are completely hidden now. So now water can't spray up in there, and they can't get nicked. And then I'm going to run that. I'll probably do like a hole in a hole, and then run a zip tie through it, so it'll like hold it nice and tight right there. And then I'll run it along this frame rail right here where the side cover goes. The idea, like I said, is to get this so it's run really neat. There's nothing pinched, and it looks really professional no matter where you look on the bike. So now you can see how we got the fender and it slid all the way up. And this is where the seat bolts go down through. But the problem is that that black thing goes all the way up. It's actually touching right like in here. But that's the great part, because now we can drill a hole through that, and the back of the seat will hold this up. We may have to put maybe like one thing back here. I don't know, but we'll see. But yeah, we'll just drill a hole through that. We'll kind of like oblong it. And the size of this bit is 23/64. So now we got to start making up these connections. The tail light itself is all made up, as you can see, but the left and right turn signals are not. So we have to put the corresponding or the correct terminal ends on them, and everything is all spelled out in the diagram and in the directions. But this is a step that I think that you guys should do. I'm not a big fan of like crimp style connectors. I'm real big into soldering things, so I would strongly suggest to you that you get some basic tools and solder these together, because it's really the right way of doing it if you want to guarantee that you're not going to have problems down the road. So I've stripped out about a 1/2 inch here, and then I just slide on one of these little rubber pieces that comes in the kit. That helps to waterproof the connector. And then we put on one of these little bullet connectors right here. That's what that looks like. And I'll show you how I do that as well. Let me put this together real slow. So the black insulation, I clamp down with these ears right here, okay? These little ears that are sticking up on this clamp, that's what I use to hold down the black insulation. So just stick the wire through just enough so that you can grab onto that. Okay, so that's mechanically held on to the wire insulation, right? So that leaves these two little ears right here to mechanically grab on to the metal. You see that right there? Those two ears can mechanically grab onto that wire that's down in there. So just take my strippers that I had and fold one side over, and then fold the other side over, and then just give it a little crimp. Cinch it down a little bit. There. So now that is mechanically held together. That theoretically can't come off. It's mechanically held on the wire insulation. It's mechanically held and connected right here in the middle. So that bullet connector is on there permanently. Well, we're going to do one added step, and that's to solder it. So that way it's a nice solid connection and it will last for many, many years. What I have is, it's called tinning fluid. It's basically like it's like a flux, basically. And I just take and just put one drip onto the connection. That's all it takes. That'll prepare it so that it can take some solder. Then I just have some flux core or rosin core wire, meaning that it also has flux in it. Then I just have a cheap micro torch from Harbor Freight. Then I just heat up the connector and let the solder draw up into it. Let me show you. So I heat the connector, then put a little bit of solder on it. See that? There we go. And we just slide our boot back on, and we're in business. Like I said, this is super solid. This is, in my opinion, the best way of doing it, because not only have you mechanically held this together and electrically connected it in a mechanical way, you've also soldered it. So this is just a very, very, very solid connection that you do not have to worry about. I'll put a little bit of dielectric grease on these connectors, and when you plug them in, that's one other less thing that you got to worry about is corrosion and moisture. You put a little dielectric grease on that, and this is just as good as any factory connection. So these two blacks, according to the wire diagram, will go underneath the terminals right here. And then one of these reds is left and one is right. So we got to put ends on these as well. So I will put the connector ends on these the same as I did on these, and we'll be right back and we'll plug them in. And I'll do it one more time for you guys. I'll just solder it up. These are all mechanically fastened now. We'll heat up. Again, we're going to heat up the fitting, the connector, not the solder, because we want the solder to be drawn into the joint. That's the best way of doing it. So heat up the connector, and eventually the solder will just melt. There it goes. It'll melt from touching the connector. Done. You know, this kind of, in my opinion, this is what really separates a professional job and doing it the right way from just an average job to how most people may do it. I'd rather go the extra mile now because it's a lot easier to do it now and not have a problem while we're doing it right now and getting it all laid out than it is to try to figure out, you know, on the side of the road because your lights aren't working and you got some sort of problem. This is just kind of like an added assurance that you don't have to worry about something, you know? Yeah, so I just soldered these connections right here. Now I'm going to put some heat shrink on them, and then I'll wire it down into the red and black off the harness. And that is for the front brake lever switch that'll put on the brake light in the back. Now I just got a couple little pieces of heat shrink that I'm going to put over this just so it dresses it up a little bit. Just slide that over it like that. There. Now everything at the front of the bike was all just plug and play. So what I did was I didn't get too in depth in showing you how I connected everything up because, like I said, just all plug and play. But here I ran the cable up from the rear and then made one loop, came back around, and then ran it out to the front, and then I've kind of like tucked everything up nice and neat up there. These are just our lighting wires for our headlight, but that leaves us now to, we got to hook up the stator. The stock stator in this, what that does is that produces AC power. Well, these don't have provisions to put out DC power, which will power a lighting circuit. Like I said, we can go independent and just run this battery and let this battery power up the taillights, the blinkers, turn signal, and horn, and the headlight, but it's not going to last as long. So I'm going to put a charging system on it. So I've got a replacement stator that puts out AC voltage for the spark plug, puts out AC voltage to charge this battery so it can run all the accessories indefinitely, so it's always recharging itself. Next thing we got to do is we got to remove this stator nut. Then it takes a special puller to pull off this flywheel. You can see down here there's some threads in the flywheel. So this little tool threads into those threads. Then this little center piece that you spin here pushes through, and it just pulls that stator right off. So that's a 17mm nut. We got to back that off. Then we can pull off the stator. Pull off the flywheel. Then we can put in a new stator and a new pickup, and we should be in business. So now we'll thread this in. I think these are left-handed threads. Yep. May even want to spray it with some liquid too, just to help thread it on better. You want this engaged in there pretty good because you don't want to pull the threads out of the flywheel. That wouldn't be good. There we go. She bottomed out. And this tool also comes with a little pack of grease, and that is to put on the threads. And you don't have to use it all. This will last multiple uses so that it doesn't wear the tool out, basically. Having the proper tool for the job makes things usually go so much better. So, I don't know, this is like $15, this tool, and it's like made to do this. This should come off fairly easy. There it goes. That's how easy it is. Popped it right off. See that? You'll fiddle with this for a while if you don't have the right tool. So now that we've got the flywheel off, we're going to be replacing out the stator. So this is the model number to that. Again, I'll have part numbers and a description with current pricing all listed here within the video shortly. So here's our new stator that we're going to be replacing our old one with. And as you can see, this one is equal to that, but then it has all these extra windings on it. Whereas this stator here actually has the pieces there. There's just no windings on it. So you could actually rewind this yourself if you chose to do so. I chose not to. I just wanted something simple. This was around $70 for this. This is a complete direct bolt-in kit specifically for this bike. So everything should pretty much match up color for color. These two wires here should be plugging into the actual existing wires of the bike, and then this wire here will actually be the charging system. This yellow wire, I believe, is the additional wire. Let's get the old one off. It's just a couple 8mm bolts that remove it, and we can get the old one out and get the new one on. Stator goes right into this boot right here. So like pull this back. This will plug in color for color, guys, by the looks of it. Yeah, that unplugged. Just remove the old unit. There's that. I wasn't exactly sure how to wire this up, guys, so I reached out to the folks at Electrosport, and I gotta say, totally impressed. I spoke with a lady on the phone there. Awesome customer service. She put me through and gave me someone's email, and literally I emailed them asking them, you know, I'm not sure how to wire this up. I don't really know. It doesn't seem to be working the way I think it should. And within like a few minutes, they corresponded back with me and gave me, told me just how to do it. So what we got to do, guys, is it's called floating the ground on this. This would be like the original coil that came on your bike to fire it, or at least for this bike. These additional pieces right here, those are for the lighting circuit. So basically how this works, guys, is that you see this little piece of magnet wire. It's called magnet wire. That goes right to this prong right here that has epoxy coating on it. And that prong is connected to the body of this. So when you put the screws through these terminals here, it actually grounds this circuit. So the wire goes around, around this, then around this one, then it goes around this, and around this, and around this, and then it comes back to this. So what we need to do is separate this wire right here, so here's the beginning of that wire, and here's the end of that wire. We need to separate that from ground and solder a lead onto just the wire and add an additional lead to this harness. And this is how it's going to work. Here's our Electrosport stator, the existing AC wires that come out, the yellow wire with a double barrel connector, which is that comes with your kit. And now we're going to put in that new wire. So off your regulator rectifier, green is going to go to your battery negative, pink is going to go to your new yellow wire that we're going to run, which is isolated from ground. The yellow wire is going to go to the yellow on the stator, and orange is going to go to fused battery power. There is another way to do this, guys, and it's not the way that was recommended through Electrosport, but they said it will work. You can take this pink wire off this and ground it back to the frame of the bike, and that should work without floating that ground or adding that extra yellow wire. The problem with that is that you need to isolate all your ground wires off all your accessories. So you couldn't have, you couldn't ground the negative side of a light back to the frame. It wouldn't work. It's going to cause problems. So for that reason, they recommended the right way of doing it would be to float the ground if you're going to use DC lights and LEDs, and that's what I want to do. I want to do it the best way possible, and that's the way they recommended, so that's what we're going to do. Alright guys, I heated this up, as you can see, and I was able to remove it from the post that is ground, and now we're going to just solder onto this wire. Now if we kind of want to test what we've done, guys, we can take a multimeter, and I've got it set so for continuity it's going to make a sound. So if I ground the body of the rectifier and I touch the post where the coil winding used to be, it should give continuity, and it does. Now if I touch the coil wire to ground, it should not anymore, and it doesn't, because we've now floated that ground. We've isolated the ground. We've removed this coil wire from that contact point. So now all we got to do, guys, is just the new yellow wire that we're running, the additional one. We're going to solder it right onto this wire that we just removed from this post. So to keep things neat and tidy, guys, we will run the wire. This is 14 gauge wire. Probably, I'm thinking maybe a 16 would be a little bit better just because it's smaller. But we will run these wires with the other ones, and you can see I've just slid on. I'd love to have some of this high temp stuff here, but I don't. I've just got some of this heat shrink tubing, so I'm sliding some of that on. I think that'll work good for this. I do have some high temp tape that I may or may not wrap around it. I don't know. So So what we'll do is we'll pull some slack through, and we will just kind of do what they did. We will wrap our wires similar to how they've wrapped them. So we'll come around this way. Let's see, come up over here, and we might as well come right up over the top of this, taking a pair of needle nose pliers and just trying to make things look neat and tidy. And to keep things nice, I will slide a piece of heat shrink over my new yellow wire. And I've got this a little bit longer than necessary just to give me room to work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little hook on the end of this wire to kind of give me like a mechanical type connection. Alright, so you can see that I've taken the coil wire here, put a little hook on that, and then I ran the stranded wire through it, looped it back onto itself, and kind of like spun it around itself. I'm just looking to make like a real good connection, get a lot of contact points, so if this were to heat up, that it's still a solid mechanical connection. And I would recommend, guys, that you do a little bit of research into soldering. Pick up some soldering tools. It's a good skill to have. Might as well do it once, do it right, and not have to worry about it again. You always want to like heat up the wires in the part and not necessarily just drop solder on it, because you don't want a cold solder joint. You want to make sure that the part is heated up so that the solder gets drawn into it. There. Now that's a nice solid connection. Now we can slide up our heat shrink. Now I'm just going to take a heat gun and heat up that shrink sleeve. Now we'll just neatly run this in a path that makes sense. So we'll kind of just duplicate what they did. Run it down. Kind of around a little bit. So here's our new connection, guys. We've removed this winding wire from this point of contact here, which is floating the ground, and then it runs underneath, up, and back down through where the rest of the wires go. Now I'll just heat up that heat shrink here that we just added on the back side. There, and now that this is all made up, now we can install it back on the bike. Perfect. And if we want to check our work, guys, just to make sure what we did was right, again, we're back on continuity. And remember before, when we touched this double barrel connector right here, that it had continuity. When we touched it to the body of the stator, none. And if we touch our new wire that we just added into the harness, we shouldn't have continuity either, and we don't. So now our grounds are completely isolated from the stator. Now this will be real easy. Now this new wire that we just connected just goes to the pink wire on the voltage regulator. Done. Now we'll just basically put it back like it was. We'll put it underneath this little factory clip right here, just like that. And run it right back up and plug it right back into the factory connections. I mean, it doesn't get really much easier than that, guys. While we're right here, I'll actually put the pickup coil back in. Snug that down. So, you know, nothing else, guys. This has a nice, new pickup coil, basically new charging system. So, if anything, this thing is going to have real nice spark. Have a real should be real crisp. So these two bolts here are going to be 7 foot-pounds, and then the bolt that holds on the magnetic pickup appears that it's 4. So I've got my torque wrench set for 5. I just want to break these off, you know what I mean? This is... There's 5 there. I'll probably just go 5, you know? I took a little wire brush, cleaned up the flywheel a little bit. This is pretty straightforward. line it up to the key. Wow, strong magnet. Line it up to the keyway. There it is right there. I think this was maybe 47 or so. I'll have to take a look. A valuable thing to have is I have a service manual. Well, not necessarily the service manuals, but I print off all the torque specs, the stuff that I do on all my bikes frequently, and I just keep them all in one place. So this is like my daily driver, my Suzuki, my KTM, and I highlight the stuff that I do a lot of, which can be like, you know, tire changes, torque specs, chain slack adjustment, just things that you need to know that you should be checking regularly. And then as you can see here, I actually make like little notes, like you can see front axle clamp bolt. I just know that it's a 6mm Allen head that I need to grab. You know, the oil drain bolt torque, what size it is, I'll write what size wrench. So it's really good to have a book that you can keep all the torque specs handy. You can see right there, ignition system, flywheel nut, come over, 47 foot-pounds of torque. Well guys, I got this nut torqued. I'm a little hesitant to show you how I did it because it's kind of ghetto, but also I have to accept the fact that we don't always have the right tools for the job, so you still want to get it done, right? So with that in mind, I've got this little magnet piece out of the way so I'm not damaging that. I took a little 3/8 bolt, stuck it in this hole just a little bit. I want to make sure that it doesn't go through the back very far because I don't want to go banging into the stator that's in behind it, okay? So I know it's ghetto, and I'm not telling you that's what you should do, but I'm just showing you what I did because I needed to get it done. I took a pipe wrench, put it on just like that against that bolt, and then gave her a push. And I was able to torque it. They actually make a tool for this. It has a couple fingers in it, and it's like a wrench that you squeeze that'll do the same thing, but it's hard for me to justify buying that tool for the very few times that I've ever needed to do this. Sometimes you just kind of got to make do with what you got, you know. Now it's time to put the cover back on. I think these are also 7 foot-pounds of torque, if I remember correctly. So if you're doing that on one of these bikes, guys, on an XR100R, specifically a 2002, this is going to be a great place to mount your regulator rectifier, and you can see exactly how I've done it. Actually, one of these fins touches just the edge of this switch, and then there's a screw here and here, and what I did is I just drilled and tapped and threaded the holes right into the frame and mounted this regulator right there. So I've got the tank all back on, and I've got the horn mounted up. You can see it barely down in there where it lives, and it's a really clean install. This is pretty much the most of the wiring that you're going to see is right back here. The one thing that I didn't mention that I want to make sure that you guys do is make sure when you're running the wires back from that regulator rectifier that you run another power wire, just one more, that's fused in this area somewhere back here towards the battery, that's constant 12-volt power. Run it all the way to the front of the bike up behind where your headlight's going to go. And also, before you put your tank on, run another ground wire and run it up in behind the headlight. So you'll have a ground wire and a hot wire that's constant power. And you can tap into that constant power for accessories. So like, let's say you had a phone charger or something that you wanted to do, but you're also going to wire this into your Tusk kit. So these are the 3 wires that are left over from the Tusk kit, and these go to your headlight. So the constant power wire, you're going to, from the battery, that one that I told you to run up on behind the headlight, you're going to connect that to the black wire of that kit. And that's kind of weird, but what that does is that puts power up to this switch for your headlight. So obviously it's going to put power up here. It's now in the off position. So then you'd put it to the low beam position, and that's going to be one of these. I don't know which one. It's either blue or it's going to be white. That's power. And then when you put it to the high beam, it's going to be the opposite of what that was. So that's one thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do is get power up to the front. So this is how you figure out, guys, So this is how you figure out whether or not your charging system is actually working. So we got it set on DC volts. I have the negative side of this lead grounded to the frame of the bike, and I'm just going to tap it into this 12 volt positive coming off the battery. 12.65 is our voltage. So that's how much voltage is in that battery right now, because it's not running obviously. So 12.65. That should change when we start it up to something higher if it's charging, obviously. There you go, guys. That's how you know it's charging. So it's putting it out about 13.1 volts at idle. And that's simple as that, guys. There's a couple things I just wanted to touch on just to be clear, because I feel like it might not have been. So if you plan to run off the battery that comes with your Tusk kit, you don't have to put on this voltage regulator and rectifier. You don't need that, and you don't need the new Stator. If you don't do it, it's going to save you probably about $100. It'll take about $100 off your bill if you decide not to do those two components. All right, as you can see, I've got it back together. I want to show you kind of a couple examples of how clean this thing is. Like, you look underneath and look, all you see is just a little piece of wire right there. Nothing down there. It's all clean. There's nothing that can get hit or clipped. Where the wire comes out of the motor for the Stator, it looks all factory still. It's all run up as normal. You can see this is pretty clean up here, and all the wiring is tucked neatly up behind the headlight. I've got the mirrors on. I really like these mirrors. These are very similar to the mirrors on my Ninja 1000, which is why I got these perches with the mirror in them. This kit comes with one mirror. I didn't want to use it. I wanted to have dual mirrors because not having a mirror plugged into that hole kind of would have looked foolish. And I got the headlight on. There's nothing that you have to do special. I bought brackets. So these are actually a handlebar mirror bracket that I installed. And then I just put the kit together that comes with the headlight and the little L brackets, and then just lined everything up. And I had to supply this stainless steel bolt right here. But like I said, these are just mirror mounts right here, and I just clamped them to the handlebars and then just installed the headlight to it, and you can adjust it up and down. Came out really well. I think it looks super clean. It looks factory. Now there's one more component that I'm going to add to this that you don't necessarily have to, but I'm going to. And you could use your phone for it, put a phone mount, but I need to install a speedometer. And the speedometer actually has left and right indicators built into it. It's about $100, so that way if you leave your blinker on, you'll actually know by looking at the speedometer dash that it'll be flashing green with an arrow showing that you left it on. This is how the electrical system works. If you wanted the bike off, like it is right now, you could actually turn on the headlight. You can see, just like that. It'll run for a long time just off battery. So that's running off battery right now. When you start it, of course, it'll start charging your system. Then when you turn on the system, you can turn that on. So now that energizes your taillight. So then we'll put on the left turn signal, and that's automatically going to flash the left turn signal up front. See, I like how clean that is. Horn, and then rear brake by the foot, and front brake by the handlebar. You can see it in the little banner up there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I picked up a piece of 3/4 inch wide aluminum, and I'm going to make a mount for the dashboard. It's going to come through this hole. It's going to go up, over, then back down, and the dashboard is going to fix into that. If you want to see how I did that, I'm going to be doing that over on my welding and fabrication channel. I'll have a link to that video up above. You guys can check that out. And look what just arrived, guys. I got the speedometer. So let me just get everything installed, and then everything is going to wire up color for color. It's going to be pretty straightforward, but when we go to hook up the speed magnets, I'll bring you in back for that. And here it is, guys, all installed, and I could not be any more happy. Let me show you a little bit. See the little side angle. So you can see kind of now how I was saying you can adjust this back at any angle you want to see, so you've got, you know, good viewing angle. And like I said, I did this part over on my other channel if you want to check it out. But you can see how clean it is, comes down, still on the vibration mounts. I had to put a little plastic shim spacer right here just to help clear this part. But all in all, I mean, this is like super clean install, and that's what I wanted. Now I'll show you how slick this is. So I just snapped on the on switch, and that turns it on, so it gives the time, how many miles you've gone. So I've actually taken this out to try it. And there's some setup instructions that you have to do, but that's all in the instructions. I'm not going to go over that. It's pretty straightforward. And I'll show you how I did the magnet pickup. This has like 6 brightnesses, I think, for backlighting. You can change like trip meter. There's your voltage. So if you're wondering how many volts your battery's putting out, it'll actually show you that your system is charging. Average mile per hour, then maximum mile per hour. And you can do the same thing with RPM and stuff like that. There's a CR2032, I think it is, battery that retains the clock and memory. But the one feature that I really like with this, well, there's actually a couple that were really impressive. So when you're driving, sometimes you have a tendency to forget that you left your blinker on. So let's put on our left blinker here. Okay, you can see that that's actually going. Well, look at the indicator on the dash. So when you're driving, it'll tell you that you've left your blinker on. Same thing. So now I'll turn it off. Now you turn on your right blinker. Boom. It tells you that your right blinker's on. So it'll help you remember to turn it off. But the one feature that I'm really impressed with is that, you know, on your car, when you start your car up, you have the little check engine light that's orange. Well, this also has an orange check engine light that you can program, and you can program it to turn on either by hours or by miles. The manual calls for, I think, every 600 miles to change the oil. You can program it so that every time it sees that repetitive number, so if you did every 600, you know, 6, 12, 18, 24, it'll turn on. The check engine light will come on to let you know. So the great part about this is, whereas this is going to be my wife's dirt bike, when the check engine light comes on, I don't really have to like overly keep track of it. She'll just tell me, hey, the check engine light's on, I can do an oil change on it. It's that easy. Surprisingly enough, is I just was backing up. I never even noticed this. I don't even know how long this has been here. Look what I just found. So my wife left me a note on her motorcycle that she's thankful for what I'm doing. Well, I say, guys, I think I got myself a good woman. Here's another look of that setup. It's just really clean. For the speedometer setup, here's your pickup wire, guys. And I've run it under the number plate, kind of made like a little loop for suspension travel, and just clipped it right here. You need to leave some room so that the suspension can travel up and down. And then I've just clipped the wire all along it with some cable ties. Now, as far as the pickup, because this is made to go on a disc brake, the pickup, and the little magnet is to go into the discs, I had to kind of fabricate up my own thing. So what I did is this setup came with 2 brackets, and the brackets are made to bolt onto the caliper of your vehicle and then hold the pickup, which is this. And then underneath, there's a little set screw that you tighten down so you can slide the pickup in and out to whatever depth you need. Well, what I did was, as you can see, I welded this bracket right here, and I welded a little tab on it in the back, as you can see, and then ran a hose clamp through it. This is super solid. This like is not moving. And clamped that bracket right to the fork, and then put the pickup through the standard bracket that's here. And for the other side, see how you have these little holes for your spokes? I just took some epoxy and glued the magnet right into one of those holes, and I've already headed up the road, so there's been 0 issues there. So that's a pretty easy setup. A lot easier than I thought it was going to be, but like I say, other than the welding of the bracket, which you'll need to do, it was pretty simple. And you can see, there you go, kind of get a better look right there. So yeah, that's that. The next thing I'm going to be doing, guys, not in this video, we'll do it in a separate video, is I'm going to re-gear this. Stock gearing on this is a 14 tooth front and a 50 tooth rear. and probably the speed on this is right around 35 miles an hour or so. I don't want to be in a 35 mile per hour zone and have this bike strung right out. You know, I don't want to blow it up. So if I can put a taller gear in it and re-gear it and have the motor not screaming out as much, then that's the goal anyways. This isn't going to be ever on the highway, but I want it to be more suitable for around town commuting, and re-gearing it definitely is going to do that. And that's all there is to it, guys. Stay tuned, because next week we're going to take this bike out, we're going to run it up the road, we're going to try it out how it is right now, and then we're going to re-gear it and see how it goes. I think it's going to be so much better. We're hoping to get this up to maybe around 55 miles an hour, which will be more suitable for around town driving. I know this is a really long video, but my goal was to try to make sure that I had all the information in one place. So if somebody had a dirt bike and they want to know how to put a charging system on it with LED lighting, you can easily do that. The one thing I didn't say within the video, if you wanted to go with a halogen light versus an LED light that I did here, you could actually come off that single yellow AC wire and just run it up to your halogen light and then ground the other side of it right back to your frame, and it would have been that easy. But I wanted to go with LED lights everywhere, and that's what we have, and I wanted to make sure that I had a 12-volt charging system, so it's just hassle-free. If my wife gets to work and leaves everything on and it totally kills the battery, she doesn't have to worry that she can't drive home in the dark because she doesn't have lights. All she's got to do is kick start it, and the minute the bike starts up, the lights are going to come on and the charging system is going to start recharging the battery. It's just kind of a hassle-free way to do it. Like I said, it cost me about $100 more doing it that way, but for me, it was peace of mind. If you're wondering about any of the things that you saw me using in this video, I have links down below that you can click on everything. Everything you saw me using, from the Tusk kit to the handlebar mounts to the light mounts, everything. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate you tuning into this. This is like my hobby channel, Motivated. If you guys come here from my welding and fabrication channel, I appreciate you coming over here and checking out my stuff too. So please like, comment, subscribe, guys. It really helps the channel. The channel's growing. You guys are showing interest in it. Until next week, I will see you guys then. Take care, guys. Bye.